It was a warm spring evening, the kind of night that made you forget everything else and just enjoy life. But not for me, not that night. That night shattered everything I thought I knew about my wife, about my life. The woman I had been married to for over 7 years, the woman I trusted with every single piece of my heart, was betraying me. I was sitting on the couch in our living room, scrolling through my phone, waiting for Sarah to get home. She had told me she'd be out late with her colleagues, celebrating a promotion, but something didn't feel right. The night had started out just like any other. She came home from work, gave me a kiss on the cheek, said she was going to meet Kyle, her boss, for drinks with some coworkers. I didn't think much of it at first. Sarah had worked late nights before, and I trusted her. But my instincts were never wrong. Something was off. I don't know what it was, but my gut was screaming at me. I grabbed my coat and headed to her office, figuring I'd surprise her, maybe join the celebration. When I arrived at her office, the lights were off, and the building was eerily quiet. As I walked around the parking lot, I noticed her car, parked near the back, away from the usual spots. I approached it cautiously, not wanting to alarm anyone, but my suspicions grew as I walked closer. The car was empty, but then I saw it, her phone, resting on the dashboard. I should have left right there. It would have been easier that way. But no, I picked it up, and that's when everything changed. There was a text message, a thread of messages between Sarah and Kyle that chilled me to my core. I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you. I miss you more, Sarah. I can't stop thinking about you. You know I'll be at the hotel room as soon as I can. Just make sure he doesn't know. My mind went blank. I read those messages over and over, trying to make sense of them, trying to deny them. But there was no denying what I was looking at. My wife, the woman I'd given everything to, was sleeping with her boss. My heart sank. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, until my phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked down to see a text from Sarah, just about to leave the bar. Meet you at home in a bit. Love you. I couldn't wait. I couldn't just go home and pretend everything was fine. Not now. I drove to the address listed in the messages, the name of a hotel. I knew it was a gamble, but I had to know the truth. As I pulled into the hotel parking lot, I saw Sarah's car parked outside. My pulse quickened. The hotel loomed in front of me, a nondescript building nestled in the middle of a quiet, empty street. I couldn't breathe. My thoughts were a chaotic storm, swirling with disbelief, anger, and confusion. But one thing was clear: I had to see this through. I parked my truck a few spaces away from her car, trying my best to keep my distance while staying hidden. The low hum of the parking lot lights did nothing to calm my racing heart. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. It was past midnight. Sarah and Kyle were probably already inside. I took a deep breath and made my way toward the entrance. The lobby was empty, except for the receptionist, who barely glanced up as I walked past him, heading toward the elevator. The elevator doors dinged open, and I stepped inside, feeling the weight of the decision I was making with each passing second. When I reached their floor, I crept down the hallway, trying to keep quiet. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Part of me still couldn't believe it was really happening. But there was another part of me, a darker, angrier part, that needed to see it for myself, needed to feel the burn of betrayal firsthand. I stopped outside room 204, the number from the texts. I could hear muffled voices on the other side of the door, and my pulse shot up again. I stood there, frozen, before finally summoning the courage to knock. But the door opened before I could even lift my hand. It wasn't Sarah. It was Kyle. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me standing there. For a split second, I thought he was going to slam the door in my face, but he hesitated. His casual expression faltered for just a moment before he cleared his throat. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "I could ask you the same thing," I spat back. "Where's Sarah?" "She's not here," he replied quickly, his words clipped, but I could hear the slight tremble in his voice. I had him cornered. "Don't lie to me, Kyle. I know what's going on," I said, my fists clenched at my sides. "I know about the texts. I know about you and my wife. So don't play dumb." For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a low voice, Kyle said, "You're too late, James. She's with me now." That's when the bombshell hit. Just as I thought I was about to explode, Sarah emerged from the room, wearing nothing but a silky robe. Her eyes went wide when she saw me standing there, her face flushing with panic. "James," she said, her voice shaking, almost pleading. "What are you doing here? You weren't supposed to know." My blood ran cold. The hurt in her voice wasn't genuine. It was the voice of someone caught in a lie, someone who had been living a double life for too long. "You think I don't know?" I shouted, stepping closer to her. "I found the messages, Sarah. I know everything. You've been sleeping with him behind my back this whole time." The look in her eyes was one of pure fear, but there was something else there too, guilt, shame. But only for a second. Then her eyes hardened. "You don't understand, James," she snapped, crossing her arms. "I didn't do this to hurt you. You've been so busy with your damn job, so focused on work, you didn't see me. You didn't see us anymore. Kyle understands me. He sees me. I needed this. I needed him." The word stung, like a slap to the face. "You think you needed him?" I snarled, my voice trembling with fury. "You think I wasn't giving you everything I had? I worked my ass off to make sure you didn't want for anything. But I guess that wasn't enough, was it? You couldn't be bothered to keep your legs closed, to show me the respect I deserved." Before she could respond, Kyle stepped forward, positioning himself between us. "Look, man, this isn't helping," he said, his voice attempting to sound calm, but I could see the defensive posture in his stance. "It's over. Sarah's with me now. You need to leave." I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't think. The anger boiled over, and I pushed him. Kyle stumbled backward into the door, hitting it with a thud. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I took another step forward, my eyes locked on Sarah. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You think this is the end of it? You think I'll just walk away and forget what you've done to me, to us? You've ruined everything, Sarah." Tears filled her eyes now, and she took a step back, almost as if she were afraid of me. But she was the one who had broken everything, not me. The next few moments were a blur. The shouting, the insults, the hurt. But as it all unfolded, I realized one thing: I wasn't just going to walk away. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not after everything I had given her. Not after everything she had taken from me. I turned around and walked away, not knowing where I was going, not knowing what was coming next. All I knew was that this wasn't over. No, this was just the beginning. But then, as I was stepping into the elevator to leave the hotel, I was stopped by a figure in the lobby. It was Detective Rachel Foster, the same detective who had been investigating some of Kyle's shady dealings in the past. "James Miller," she asked, her voice stern. "I need to speak with you." I didn't know what was going on, but I could feel something building in the pit of my stomach. "About what?" I asked, my voice tight. "About your wife," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "She's been more involved in things than you think. And now, because of your actions tonight, things are about to get a whole lot worse." My heart dropped. What the hell had I gotten myself into? The twist wasn't just about Sarah's betrayal anymore. No, it was much worse. I was in deeper than I could have ever imagined. The woman I loved wasn't just lying to me. She had orchestrated the entire thing, and I had walked right into her trap. I stood there, dumbfounded, in the hotel lobby, staring at Detective Rachel Foster. Her words echoed in my head, but they made no sense. What was she talking about? My wife had already betrayed me, and now, because of my actions tonight, things were about to spiral further out of control. What could possibly be worse than the hell I had just walked through? But Rachel wasn't done. "We've been keeping an eye on Sarah," she said, her voice calm but firm, "and we know about Kyle's activities. He's not who he claims to be. There's a lot of dirty business going on under the surface, James. And your wife, well, she's been involved in more than just an affair. She's been helping him with a few things you don't want to know about." I could barely comprehend her words. Kyle was involved in criminal activities? And Sarah? My Sarah? It was like someone had dumped a bucket of ice-cold water over me. I had just discovered the love of my life was cheating, and now I was hearing that she was entangled in something far darker than I could have ever imagined. "What are you talking about?" I spat, trying to hold myself together. "What kind of things?" Rachel stepped closer, her expression hardening. "We've been investigating a few financial irregularities, shady business deals, and even a few criminal enterprises connected to Kyle. Your wife's involvement? It's more than just sleeping with him. She's been helping him cover his tracks. You didn't see it, but she's been playing a game with you all along. A game that's about to backfire, and she's dragging you down with her." I felt a surge of nausea. The betrayal had already hurt more than I could describe, but this was something else entirely. Sarah had been using me, manipulating me while I worked myself to the bone to provide for her. But the real kicker? She had been a willing accomplice in Kyle's underworld dealings. I was nothing more than a pawn. Rachel's voice snapped me back into focus. "Now, here's the thing. You can take the high road. You can walk away from all this, let the system handle it. But I'm not offering you that option because, honestly, I don't think you want it. What I'm offering you instead is the chance for revenge. Not just for what she did to you emotionally, but for what she's done to you, what she's gotten you involved in. My stomach twisted. I had nothing left to lose. My marriage was over. I had just confronted my wife in bed with another man. She had stolen my trust and shattered my world. But Rachel was offering me something else. She was giving me a chance to exact my revenge. It was a moment of clarity, a sickening, twisted clarity. I didn't want to play the victim anymore. I wasn't going to let Sarah get away with this. I didn't care how far I had to go or how deep I had to sink into this mess. I was going to make her feel every ounce of pain I was feeling. How do I do this? I asked, my voice cold and determined. Rachel took a step back, her eyes scanning me. You want to hurt her where it counts, right? Then you need to make sure she can't escape the consequences of her actions. That means you're going to have to play their game, James. Use their own tactics against them. I was listening intently, adrenaline rushing through me. This was it. My chance to flip the script. My chance to bring Sarah and Kyle to their knees. Rachel laid out the plan in detail. It wasn't pretty, but nothing about this situation was. It wasn't about being the good guy anymore. It wasn't about keeping my hands clean. This was about making Sarah pay for every single lie, every ounce of pain she'd caused me, and I was going to do it from a place she'd never expect, while I was behind bars. The plan. First, I needed to get arrested. At first, the idea felt insane, but Rachel assured me it was the only way to get close enough to gather information. She said that Kyle and Sarah were deeply connected to a series of illegal financial deals, and the best way to get inside was to make myself an unwitting pawn. Rachel was right about one thing, my time was running out. Sarah and Kyle were already starting to cover their tracks, making sure I didn't get any further. If I didn't act fast, I'd lose the upper hand. They had already put the wheels in motion. They'd framed me, made sure I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the pieces were falling into place. The next step was for me to bait Sarah into taking the final, irreversible step. I needed her to know I was on to her. I needed her to think I was completely broken. That's when I would go for the kill. The legal kill, that is. Rachel explained that once I was behind bars, I could use my position to dig into Sarah's finances. She had been funneling money to Kyle's businesses, and I could expose everything. I would leak that information to the authorities, force Sarah to face the consequences of her betrayal, not just emotionally, but financially as well. Execution of the plan. The night I was arrested, it was like a bad dream. Sarah had no idea what was coming. I let her believe I was still the same confused, betrayed man. I let her think that she could still control the narrative. I played my part like a professional actor in the world's most twisted drama, but underneath the charade, I was plotting my revenge. While I was locked up, I made connections with people who could help me access Sarah's accounts. I didn't want to be in there forever, but I needed enough time to set the stage for what was coming. I knew she wouldn't expect me to be calm, collected, and focused. The moment she thought I had given up was when I would strike. It wasn't just about hurting her, though that was part of it. It was about exposing the lies, making her regret every decision she had ever made. The affair was just the surface. She had dragged me into a much darker world, and now it was my turn to pull the rug out from under her. The day I was released from prison, I was a different man. Gone was the broken, heartbroken version of me. In his place stood someone ruthless, someone who had a plan. But the real twist came when I received an anonymous tip, one that would change everything. Kyle, Sarah's lover, had a darker past than I could have ever imagined. What I had initially believed to be a simple affair had been part of a much larger scheme involving organized crime, and I was right in the middle of it. With everything in place, the only thing left was to watch Sarah's world burn, knowing that I had orchestrated it all from behind bars, ready to finish what I started. It was time. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had meticulously planned while I was locked up in that hellhole. I had spent months thinking about it, feeling the rage build inside me, and now I was standing on the edge of my twisted masterpiece. The final steps were in motion, and I could already see the pieces falling into place. It all started the day I was released from prison. Sarah had no idea. She probably thought that after everything I had been through, I would slink away into the shadows, broken and defeated. She had no clue that I had spent every waking moment preparing to tear down everything she had built. I made sure that when I stepped out of that courthouse, I was calm, collected. I wasn't the man she had once known, the hurt husband, the betrayed fool. That man was gone. The new me was cold, focused, and driven by one thing: revenge. I got into contact with my lawyer immediately after my release. Rachel had told me that the best way to begin the dismantling of Sarah's life was by starting with her finances. She had been funneling money through various channels, some legal, some not, but all of it connected to Kyle. I was going to expose it all, but I needed leverage. The thing about revenge is that it's not just about retaliation, it's about control. Sarah needed to feel completely powerless. She needed to know that everything she had worked for, everything she thought she had built, was about to come crashing down. And I was the one with the sledgehammer. The first move was simple. I started contacting all the people in her life who had been part of her scheme. These were people who had either helped her or turned a blind eye to the crimes she was involved in. I knew that Kyle would be one of the first to panic when he realized I was back in the game. But Sarah? She was the one I was after. She was the one who had manipulated and lied her way through everything. I had to make her see that she couldn't run from the consequences anymore. I also knew that she wouldn't take the news well. No matter how well she thought she had covered her tracks, I had the upper hand now. It wasn't just about financial destruction, it was about making her realize that I had been the one in control all along. And so, I made the first move by leaking her financial records to the media. It wasn't the full extent of the damage I was about to cause, but it was enough to get the ball rolling. Sarah had always been careful about keeping things under wraps, but I had found the cracks in her armor. The phone calls and texts started coming in. News outlets, government officials, people from her social circle, everyone wanted to know more about her shady dealings. It wasn't long before her friends started distancing themselves, and her family started questioning her. I could feel the pressure building, but the real action, the real drama, was yet to come. The first confrontation was almost cinematic in its build-up. I had been waiting for the right moment, and it came sooner than I expected. Sarah reached out to me, thinking that I was still the same man she had left behind. She sent me a message, full of the same manipulative lies, trying to play the victim once again. "James," she wrote, "I know things have been difficult, but we can talk this out, we can fix this. I'm sorry for everything. I've made mistakes, but I want to make things right." I couldn't help but laugh when I read it. The audacity, the nerve. She thought I would fall for it again. She thought I would forgive her, take her back, pretend like nothing had happened. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I made my move. I knew that the moment she realized the extent of the exposure, it would break her. The media was already all over her. Reports of financial fraud, criminal associations, and her relationship with Kyle were flooding the news. But that wasn't enough. I needed her to feel cornered. I needed her to know that her life was falling apart, and that I had orchestrated every bit of it. I arranged a meeting with Sarah at the last place she'd expect, our old house, the one we had bought together. The place that once symbolized everything we had worked for, but it was no longer ours. It was a symbol of the past, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. When she arrived, her eyes were frantic, searching my face for any sign of the man she once knew. I could see the panic in her eyes as she walked in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors. She was wearing that same smug expression, the one that always came out when she thought she had control. But today, she was walking into my trap. "James," she began, her voice trembling. "What is all this? I didn't do anything wrong. You've got to understand, I had no choice, Kyle and I." I cut her off. "No, Sarah, you didn't have a choice. You chose every single step of this. You chose to cheat, you chose to lie, and you chose to destroy everything we had. And you thought you could get away with it." She blinked, trying to process my words, but she couldn't. "You've got it all wrong. Kyle is a criminal, Sarah," I said, my voice rising. "And so are you. You're not just a cheater, you're an accomplice. You've been helping him launder money, using me as your scapegoat while you played house with him. You thought I wouldn't find out, but I did. And now, it's all over for you." She stepped back, her face paling. How did you?" "I know everything," I replied coldly, "and it's all coming out. The media, the police, your business dealings, everything. There's no way out for you now." I could see her unraveling in real time. The confident woman who had once mocked me was now nothing more than a terrified shell. But I wasn't done yet. I handed her a folder. Inside were copies of all the documents that proved her involvement in Kyle's criminal activities. The financial records, the transaction logs, the photos of them together. All the evidence she needed to face the consequences of her actions. She looked at the folder, her hands shaking, and then at me, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. You've ruined me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why?" "Because you ruined me first," I said, my voice low and firm. "And I'm done being your pawn. I'm done being your fool." As she crumpled to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably, I knew the plan was working. She had been the one who thought she could control everything, but now, I was the one holding all the cards. But the final blow, the one I had been waiting for, was yet to come. As she begged for mercy, I smiled. There was no mercy left for her. Not anymore. The final act was underway, and there was no turning back now. Sarah's world was about to come crashing down, and I was the one who had set it all in motion. She would regret the day she ever thought she could get away with this, and I would be there to watch her fall. It wasn't just a story of revenge, it was a story of transformation. The final chapter, the aftermath, wasn't just about watching Sarah pay for what she'd done. It was about my own redemption, about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and my peace. The wreckage of everything she had caused wasn't just hers to bear, it was mine to shape. And now, with everything on the line, I had the power to dictate what came next. The first thing I noticed after everything had settled was the silence. The phone calls from the media stopped coming, and the whirlwind of rumors around Sarah and Kyle began to die down. But the damage was done. I had orchestrated their downfall, and it had been more public, more painful than they could have ever imagined. Sarah's reputation was shattered. No longer the charming, successful woman who had once worn a smile that masked the ugliness underneath, she was now the face of scandal. The financial ruin she faced was only the beginning. Her once thriving business, built on lies, deceit, and manipulation, was now in shambles. The investors pulled out, the clients abandoned her, and the legal battles piled up. Every move she made to try to salvage what was left only dug her deeper into the hole I had created. The papers were full of her name, linked to criminal activity and financial fraud. The friends she once thought were loyal distanced themselves, unable to associate with someone who had fallen so far from grace. But the most satisfying part? The courts had already started their investigation into her connections with Kyle's criminal empire. When it was all laid bare, the truth would be undeniable. It wasn't just about her personal failures anymore, it was about the chain of corruption and lies that had extended far beyond our marriage. She had built her life on deception, and now, it was crumbling around her. But I knew, deep down, that the greatest form of revenge wasn't in her ruin. It was in the reclaiming of my own life. I had spent so long buried in anger and regret, but now, I could breathe. I could finally stand tall without the weight of betrayal dragging me down. Rachel had been my rock through all of this, my confidant and support. She had guided me through the darkest days, always reminding me that my worth wasn't tied to what Sarah had done to me. With Rachel's help, I started rebuilding, slowly, but surely. I'd moved out of the house, of course. The place that had once been home to me, to Sarah and me, now felt like a tomb of everything that had gone wrong. But Rachel helped me find a new place, modest, but full of promise. It felt like a fresh start, an opportunity to create something that was mine and mine alone. The walls no longer echoed with the past, they were blank canvases waiting to be filled with new memories. But my peace wasn't without its challenges. Sarah didn't just roll over and accept her fate. She fought, of course she did. After her criminal dealings came to light, she tried to salvage what was left by attempting to regain some form of control, legally, emotionally, anything she could. She reached out to me through emails, letters, and even phone calls. Always pleading, always begging for my forgiveness, like I could somehow erase the years of pain she had caused. It was pathetic. James, she had written in one letter, I've lost everything. But I need to say that I am truly sorry for everything. I was wrong. I know that now. Can't we find a way to start over? To fix what's broken? I didn't even have to think about it. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was a wasted emotion at this point. It had burned through me, and now, all I had left was indifference. So I sent the letter back unopened. There was no reconciliation possible, no second chances. The damage was irreversible, and that was the harsh truth she had to face. I didn't need to forgive her to move on. In fact, forgiveness would have kept me bound to the past, and I wasn't willing to live in that place anymore. What she had done to me, to our family, was unforgivable. I had learned to let go of the need to seek closure. It was no longer about her, it was about me and my future. Then, there was Kyle. Kyle, the man who had been Sarah's partner in crime, the one who had slithered into our lives with his false promises and lies. I had always suspected something was off about him, but I had never imagined the depth of the deceit. His fall came just as hard as Sarah's. The moment the media picked up the story of Sarah's involvement in his criminal schemes, his empire came crumbling down. The police arrested him, and the network he had been running, manipulating, laundering, and hiding behind fake identities was exposed. I watched the headlines with a detached satisfaction. It wasn't just about watching them suffer, it was about seeing their lies unfold into the chaos they had built. Kyle's arrest was public, and he was facing serious charges. Sarah was linked to him, and her name was everywhere. His downfall, just like hers, was swift and unrelenting. But what hit me hardest was the realization that I had completely outsmarted them both. They had used me, they had discarded me, and yet here I was, still standing, stronger than I'd ever been before. They thought I would break in prison, that I would be destroyed, but I wasn't the same man who had been taken away. I had become something else, someone who had learned how to fight back, how to rise from the ashes. The final chapter wasn't written in headlines or courtrooms. It was written in the quiet moments of my life, in the spaces where I could breathe without the constant weight of betrayal. It was the simple satisfaction of knowing I had done what I set out to do, taken control of my fate and lived my life on my terms. Sarah and Kyle would have to live with the consequences of their actions. They could try to rebuild their shattered lives, but they would never have what I had: regained peace. I had finally gotten my revenge, and I had done it without resorting to the violence I once thought I needed. In the end, the greatest revenge was in the life I built after the storm. As I looked out at my new life, I knew that this was only the beginning. My future was mine to create, and I was going to make sure it was everything I deserved.